Welcome everyone. Today we continue on in our Intro to Reduce series. In this video, we're going to implement the array filter method using reduce. The prerequisites for this video are just having a basic understanding of JavaScript as well as ES6 style arrow functions. To begin, let's review the filter method on arrays so that we can get an idea of what our end goal is. Let's write a simple example. The array filter method takes a predicate function as input. A predicate function is just a function that takes in some input and then returns a boolean, having checked the input against some condition. If the input returns true, I like to say that the input passes the predicate function. Filter will then keep any elements that pass the predicate and creates a new array with those elements. In our example, the predicate is whether the given number is greater than 1. And in our array, there's only one number that satisfies that condition, the number 2. It's important to note that filter will not mutate the original array, much like map, and also reduce. This is why I stress that the result is a new array. So, how could we go about writing a filter function in terms of reduce? Or, to put it another way, how can we define filter using reduce? Well, just as in the video where we implemented map using reduce, we must think about what filter needs to operate. It needs a predicate function and an array. Let's go ahead and scaffold out our filter function and call it. So, if you've been following along in the previous videos, you understand that the reducing function accepts two parameters, an accumulator and a value. You can actually accept more parameters than this in the reducing function, but we'll talk about that in a later video. Let's scaffold out the reducing function now. So, let's think about what the accumulator would be. Remember, the accumulator will be the same data type as the expected output. Since we expect an array as output, we need some array, but what array exactly? In the first video in this series, Intro to Reduce, I talked about the concept of an identity element. Be sure to check that out if you haven't. Well, it just so happens that for arrays, under concatenation, the identity element is an empty array. By that I mean when you concatenate an empty array onto another one, there's effectively no change. Why is that useful? Well, in our case, it gives us a starting point from which to build our new array. So let's put the accumulator in now. Great. Now let's talk about how to finish our reducing function. So remember, the accumulator at first will be the empty array, and the current value will be the first element in the array, which is 1. So we also have this predicate function here. Well, we can say that if the predicate function returns true for the current value, we'll concat the value onto the accumulator and return the result. Otherwise, we don't want to keep the current value. We want to remove it from our end result. So let's clean this up a bit. So to reiterate, we run the predicate function over the current value. If the result of that returns true, we concat that value onto the array that we're building, and that becomes a new accumulator. However, in the case that the predicate function returns false, we just return the accumulator and effectively are removing it from the final result. I believe that does it. Remember, this idea of going from one data structure to another, in our case it stays the same, an array, is really important. We'll continue to build on this foundation in future videos. Well, that's it for this video. Hopefully I've helped you in some way to build your understanding of how reduce works and what it can be used for. So if you have any questions, leave me a comment below, and if you liked the video, please consider subscribing, liking, and hitting that bell icon. Thanks everyone.